All right, so I'm good to go. All right, well, welcome everyone. My name is Georgia Lane. I am a program planner with the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. Thank you for joining this webinar today. We're here to talk about age-friendly practices in the Arrowhead region and beyond. So really happy that you could join us. So first, we're going to start out really big picture, thinking about aging not only here locally, but throughout the world. We know that population aging is actually a global trend. This is actually a human success story. Never before in time have people lived this long. And it's causing a lot of interesting questions to pop up and problems to solve as we look at what it means to have a global trend of aging in our world. More locally, for the first time, in 2020, the number of Minnesotans 65 and older surpassed the number of children 18 and under. So we often think about aging and how families and children, how we set up communities for them, but really when we start to look at our demographics, we are now at a new demographic composition where we have more older adults 65 and older. So a little bit of national trends, you'll see back in 2010, this is where we were at nationally for aging. You see Florida, and then some East Coast states were a little bit higher, where the majority of the country was in the lighter areas, so under 15%. And we flip ahead 20 years, and that got a lot darker. In 2020, you will note that in Minnesota, this shows statewide that we have, about 16 to 17% of our population is 65 and older. In Minnesota, we're really preparing for the year 2030 when the baby boom generation starts to turn 85 and older. So those are significant numbers for our state. You can see that life expectancy at birth has risen dramatically in the last 100 to 120 years. If you were born in 1900, you could expect or hope to live to be about 47 years, and now we're up to 79 years. So there really is a pretty dramatic increase in life expectancy. So a quick little question, maybe if you're watching this or participating, to ask yourself and maybe ask some people that you know after this webinar, what percentage of adults are 65 or better? And of those adults 65 and older, how many live in long-term care facilities? And so the answer to that is right now we have 22% of Minnesotans who are 65 or older. And then only about 3 to 5% of those adults live in some type of long-term care facility. So we have 95% of folks who actually do live in their homes. And of those 95%, or of the overall population, about 14% of them receive supports and services through our long-term services and support, so home and community-based services. Here's another map that shows the changing demographics of Minnesota. Back in 2015, there you could see St. Louis County, or in our region, St. Louis, Carlton, they were between 21 and 27%. And if you fast forward to 2030, you look, the majority of the counties in the state are actually around 28% or more. Even a large percentage of them are 35% or more. This is some really local data for 2020. Really interesting. Carlton County is the only county in our region that has more people 0 to 18 than they do people 65 and older. So leading the way are Aiken County, Cook County, are our top two for having folks who are 65 and older. In Aiken County, you can see that's 1 in 3. That is also one of the most rural counties in our area. A lot of rural counties throughout our area. So the aging of the baby boom generation, of course, is like anything that we've previously experienced. Talked a little bit about our changing demographics of 85 and older. So when you think about our oldest residents, 85 and above, that demographic is expected to more than double in the next 35 years. So currently we're at about 120,000 people, 85 and older. In the next 35 years, we're looking at about 270,000. So over 250,000 people. And the number of Minnesotans turning 65 this decade, so from 2020 to 2030, will be greater than the past 4 decades combined. So you really can see that this is a pretty quick overall demographic shift for our state and for the country. In addition to that, we know that there's research that says most people, an AARP survey shows that about 3 of 4 older adults 50 and older want to stay in their homes and communities as they age. However, there was a big discrepancy because a lot of them felt that that wasn't feasible. So anything from the accessibility of their home to proximity to supports and services that they would need, having somebody who could help them maintain their home, a lot of people felt that that wasn't feasible. So there's a mismatch between the desire of people and then their perceived ability to be able to stay at home. So that's where we really need to think about how do communities help prepare. And this is really exciting. It is on the radar of people all over the place, including our Minnesota Governor, Tim Walz. Back in 2019, which seems like a lifetime ago now, but Governor Tim Walz signed an executive order that challenged Minnesota to research opportunities and overcome barriers to become an age-friendly state. So what the governor did was formed a council of folks representing a number of stakeholders, including different state departments, Leading Age of Minnesota, a number of folks who work in the aging realm. And they came up with 8 recommendations for Minnesota to become an age-friendly community, an age-friendly state. And here, an age-friendly state is one that engages older people and understands that in order to be age friendly, a community must consider all of the impacts, including social, economic, environmental, and lifestyle factors that influence health and aging for everyone. So that's really an important point to think about when we make communities that are more age friendly. It's not just good for people who are 65 and older, it's good for everyone. And we'll learn a little bit more about that in terms of what age friendly communities are. So when we're thinking about age-friendly communities, I know that there's a lot of isms that are floating around in people's vernacular lately, and rightfully so. And often we don't hear about the prevalence of ageism and the impact of ageism. So a compelling reason for why we should be thinking about our communities and why they're age friendly is because ageism exists everywhere. It's oftentimes overlooked, and we don't realize the impact that it has on ourselves internally as well as others in our community. So, in terms of a definition, the World Health Organization describes ageism as the stereotyping and discrimination against individuals or groups on the basis of their age. It can take many forms, including prejudicial attitudes, discriminatory practices, or institutional policies and practices that can perpetuate stereotypical beliefs. Um, we often hear about ageism as being the only prejudice against our future selves. So in that sense, it's really an absurd prejudice because if we're lucky, one day we will all be older. And when we think about ageist attitudes, it really is that prejudice against our future self. So a few myths that might pop up in communities or elsewhere, just to try to debunk these myths a little bit. So one myth is that older individuals are all the same. So there's a lot of stereotypes about old people and they all get grouped into one category. But the actual fact is that as we get older, people are more unique. Aging is as unique as our whole, diverse population that we have. So we begin our lives shaped by our genetics and influenced by our environment, our family circumstances, and the choices of others. But as we grow into adulthood, our lives are shaped by our own choices, including our health, employment, whether we have a family, hobbies and habits, etc. So as we grow older, we evolve into multifaceted individuals. So we are all unique. And more so as we age, we have all these different life experiences that help us and stories that shape us to who we are. Um, the second myth is that older people can be an economic burden on society. So we've heard things, there's been terms used such as like uh, a tsunami of older adults or the aging tsunami, and a fear that it's going to be taxing on our system and that all older adults are going to need support and we don't have the infrastructure or capacity to give them that support. And we really want to think about flipping that on the head because, as I mentioned before, We know that 95% of older adults live in their own homes, and about of the total older adults, 65 and older, 85% of them don't rely on home and community-based supports and services. So older folks, older adults can and do contribute to communities, and they contribute definitely economically as well. There's some data on here, according to the Longevity Economy Outlook by AARP. The economic contributions of 50 and older Americans totaled $8.3 trillion, which puts them just behind the US and China. So if that group of folks were considered a country, and I'll flip over to this slide, you can see that the US population of 50 and older would be the world's third largest economy by GDP in trillions. So older adults definitely do contribute to our economy. They're not just living off public supports and services. They're really a vital part to our communities as well as our economy. So another myth, most older adults or older people will end up in a nursing home. We talked about that a little bit. In 2014, there were 48 million people over age 65 living, and about 84% lived in homes within the community and were not receiving any support. So fewer than 3% were living in nursing homes or other long-term care settings. Here are just a couple images of ageism, things that you might see. There's a lot of media campaigns around that promote youth, that idolize youth and talk about fighting against aging. And so that's definitely things that we internalize, our own internal views. So it could come up with things like, oh, I'm turning 72 and I guess I'm just tired and I just look this way because that's how old I am. And the reality is that chronological age doesn't correlate with decline in health or decline in energy or decline in cognitive ability. So there's a lot of variability in what it means to be aging. So what and what now? So when we think about number one, the aging demographics that we have, number two, the ageist beliefs that exists internally and in communities, we think about what can we do about it. And so we have a wonderful framework put forth by AARP and the World Health Organization that talks about making communities age-friendly or livable. And as I mentioned previously, age-friendly communities are communities for all ages. An age-friendly world enables people of all ages to actively participate in community activities and treats everyone with respect, regardless of their age. Age-friendly communities or livable communities are a place that makes it easy for older people to stay connected to people that are important to them. And so you think about communities, just a small example is if an age-friendly practice could be having accessible streets and accessible sidewalks. If you have a sidewalk that has cutouts and that's shoveled in the winter and free of snow, that's good not only for older adults who might be using some type of walker or wheelchair or just not want to slip on the ice. That's also good for a young parent who might be pushing a stroller or anybody who's trying to, walk on the sidewalks. And so there's very common practical ways that and principles for utilizing age-friendly frameworks that doesn't just benefit older adults, but it benefits people of all ages. Another small example is the idea of intergenerational activities. And so when we have our youth who are learning from and interacting with people of all ages, including older adults, it just creates for a richer culture. It creates for a stronger fabric in our community. And so we don't want to silo the issue of aging in communities just as an issue that concerns older adults. It really makes communities stronger for people of all ages. I really love this concept about radical collaboration because oftentimes when we are approaching an issue, whether it is around healthcare, whether it's around childcare, whether it's around caring for older adults, we often think of those things in just their own category. And the framework of age-friendly communities really requires us to think a little bit differently. It takes radical collaboration. So collaboration often involves the same people that address the same problem in the same ways and expect different outcomes. But radical collaboration is different because we want all people at the table which includes a diversity of ideas, a diversity of experiences, cultures, and socioeconomics. It's a fundamental a fundamental new way to understand old problems. So another example would be if you're talking, about homelessness. You don't just want folks who are doing homelessness or focusing on homelessness at the table. You really want people talking about housing from all different sectors of the community. And so the age-friendly framework really allows for that. Um, so the AARP Age-Friendly Network, there are 8 domains, which is available for more information on another, the second link with my friend Jay Hapola with AARP is talking about a network. But I'm going to talk a little bit about why now? Why should we do this? With all the priorities that are going on, we are all working to come out of this pandemic and think about what the world looks like, what life looks like. Why should we think about age-friendly communities? Number one, I think the thing, just simply the aging demographics. And so if we are approaching community work and community development without an awareness of our demographics, it's really to the detriment of everyone in the community. Joining the network helps local leaders identify and understand community needs. And so it's really a way to raise awareness. It provides leadership and volunteer opportunities. There's some public recognition for committing to becoming an age-friendly community. So there's lots of great reasons, and certainly every community and every individual has to determine why they want to come up with the energy and the support to think about aging and age-friendly practices in their community. One opportunity, we have just recently launched our Aging Impact Award. This is an award given by the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging. This is open through June 21st of 2021. So you still have some more time, but we're really wanting to acknowledge and give some attention to local businesses and or organizations. So you don't have to be a for-profit business. You could be a not-for-profit organization. We want to strengthen this network of businesses that intentionally respond to the needs of older adults in the community. So the criteria is that you have to be a business or community organization in the 7-county Arrowhead region that's responding to the needs of older adults by providing an innovative service. So we're really leaving this open-ended. It's really looking at, what types of adjustments have been made or what types of additional efforts have been made by businesses or organizations to really acknowledge the needs and meet the needs and unique strengths of older adults. So it could include everything from adapting and making improvements to the physical space, thinking about marketing and messaging to older adults, thinking about hiring practices. So are we hiring folks, having intergenerational teams, thinking about training for employees or customer experiences. So we have nominations are open. We do have the age-friendly Arrowhead at ardc.org. Email. So if you're interested in more information, please take a look at that or reach out to any one of the Arrowhead Area Agency on Aging staff. And we've got a couple upcoming events that are happening actually next week. May 11th is a busy day for us. In the morning, we have a home modifications, accessibility, and safely aging in place webinar. And these are all educational offerings that do fit under the age-friendly umbrella. They fall under one of the 8 domains. And so certainly that built environment around how do you help older adults adjust their homes or make home modifications so that they can stay in their homes. So that's in the morning. And then we have our spring mini conference that's talking about social isolation. And this is the afternoon of May 11th. We're going to learn a little bit about the ways that we have been impacted by social isolation, what is the landscape, and then some breakout discussions on identifying community needs. And then on our second day, we have Dr. Joe Bianco, who's the Essential Health Director of Ambulatory Care, talking a little bit more about the physical health implications, mental health implications, what happens, when folks get isolated, when they start to feel lonely, and how that affects us, our physical and mental health. And then wrapped up by panel presentations from some of our great regional providers who have been responding to social isolation throughout the pandemic. And that is it for me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, and please reach out if you have any further questions.
Okay, did you want to talk as though you've done the breakout sessions and do the post breakout session part?
No, I just tacked the post breakout session. That those last 3 slides were it.
Okay, because one of the things also is that last slide about the mini conference, you've dated this video.
Well,
Because,
that's okay,
okay, all right, okay.
because we'll have those. Well, hopefully we'll have those recorded.
Okay. So do you have anything else that you would like to record at this time?
I don't.
Okay.
Do you think anything needed re-recording?
No, my